Hello everyone and welcome back to my Warhammer 40k guides. I am Brady, and today on this wonderful day I would like to give you guys and gals a video I've been wanting to make for a while, which is a discussion about the hands down strongest army in the game, and that army is Grey Knights. So without wasting any time,
let's just jump into it.
So I think everyone clearly knows that Grey Knights are by far the strongest army in the game. So let's talk about what makes Grey Knights so good. So the first reason Grey Knights are so good is because they are all psychers.
Stand back, mother! We're having a telekinetic battle of men!
Pretty much every unit in the army is a psyker except for some of the vehicles. And not only are they all psychers, but Grey Knights can also smite as many times as they want without penalty. So they can cast smite a ridiculous amount of times. And when Grey Knights do use smite, their smites are the most consistent in the game with doing a flat 1 mortal wound each time. Other armies have to rely on the unreliable D3 mortal wounds for their smites, but Grey Knights just get a flat rate of 1 mortal wound, which means consistency. The main thing pro players look for in armies is consistency, and Grey Knights definitely have that when it comes to their smites. Alongside their super consistent smites, they have access to 6 spells just like pretty much every other army in the game. Grey Knights are supposed to be some of the best psychers the Imperium has to offer, and their rules definitely show that. Most of their units, including characters, can only take 1 spell from the discipline as well, which is great because you only have about 6 units in your 2,000 point list anyways, so that's 1 spell for each unit.
Wow.
The spells are also some of the best in the game. For example, the spell Purge Soul, which is really good against killing stuff like cultists and guardsmen, because you know mortal wounds are best used against enemy chaff units that have crappy saves that are only 4 or 5 points a model. So you definitely want to be using your spells that do mortal wounds to kill those guys, especially when your opponent has 60 plus of them to get through. There's definitely more spells that are amazing as well, but let's not waste too much time talking about their psychic shenanigans, and let's talk about their stratagems. So Grey Knights have a whopping 2 pages of stratagems. Some codexes have 3 or 4 pages of stratagems, but Grey Knights don't need all those fancy things. They are a very humble army and only take what they need. And out of these 2 pages of stratagems, only 1 page is actually unique stratagems that Grey Knights can use. The other page is stratagems that any Astartes chapter can use. So let's talk about some of the banger stratagems, which I think are the most useful. For example, we have a stratagem called Teleportarium that is 1 command point and allows you to deep strike an infantry unit or a dreadnought, which is great because it's not like all of our infantry can already deep strike naturally through their own rules, and it's not like you need the dreadnoughts on the board to count as half your army, so the infantry can actually go in deep strike.
That makes sense to me.
We also have a stratagem called Mental Focus, which allows a Grey Knight to cast an extra spell since most of the Grey Knights can only cast 1 spell in the first place. So they would cast the 1 spell from their discipline as their normal spell, and then pay 1 command point to cast a smite that does 1 mortal wound.
Nice.
You can't really get much more efficiency than this. We also have stuff like Psychic Onslaught, which increases the strength and AP on Gatling silencers, heavy Sigh cannons, silencers, and Sigh cannons in a unit for that phase. This stratagem would most likely be 1 command point in most other armies, but Grey Knights are humble and willing to pay more for things. So we pay 2 command points for this stratagem out of the 8 we start the game with. And that's only if we brought a battalion, and if we did bring a battalion, that's pretty much all we can afford with how beefy our units are. We also have another stratagem called Heed the Prognosticars, which has to happen at the beginning of your turn, so you totally never forget to use it. And it's 2 command points to make one of your characters get +1 to their invulnerable save. So if you're using something like a Nemesis Grandmaster, you'd want to use this every turn. Which means with this stratagem and Psychic Onslaught being used on turn 1, you're halfway through your command points on the first turn of the game. We also have a stratagem called Psybolt Ammunition, which again is 2 command points, and it increases the strength and AP on Stormbolters in a unit by 1. This is totally worth it to deplete yourself of command points on turn 1 alongside those other stratagems, especially when you're going to use it to maybe kill 10 tactical marines with it.
Now that's a lot of damage.
So overall, with our 1 page of unique Grey Knight stratagems, and half of those costing 2 command points, this army can definitely get some use past turn 1 and make it long into the late game because their stratagems are just so damn good. So now let's briefly talk about a couple of units themselves that make them amazing choices for competitive play. First, let's talk about the Strike Squad, which is one of the 2 troop choices Grey Knights have at their disposal. So these guys are 21 points a model, which is 8 points more than a regular tactical marine. So what do you get for these extra 8 points? Well, you get the most consistent smite in the game that does 1 mortal wound, you get access to 1 spell from your discipline, but you can only cast 1 spell, so you're either doing that one or smite. You get force weapons on your guys that will totally get to be used because it's not like you're going to die on your way to close combat because of the amazing regular Space Marine stat line that they have, and they get a 5+ invulnerable save. The The invulnerable save is great because the things that infantry die to the most are stuff like glass cannons with high AP. It's not like marines or infantry die to regular anti-infantry, which is just volume of shots at 0 AP or -1 AP, so this 5+ invulnerable save is definitely worth it and definitely going to be used. Also, you can deep strike these guys. This is great because it stops you from being shot at on turn 1, so you can come in, kill 40 points of guardsmen, fail your 9-inch charge because you don't really have a way to boost that other than a warlord trait we'll get into later, and then die on the next turn. Super elite soldiers these guys are. And the other troops choice we have are Terminators, because yes, Terminators are troops in Grey Knights. So these guys are more expensive Terminators than normal Terminators, because they have to pay for things normal Terminators don't get, kind of like the strike squads when compared to regular tactical marines. So the Terminators pay extra for their consistent 1 wound smite, their spell that they can know from the discipline but can only cast 1, either the smite or that spell. They can re-roll failed wound rolls against demons, which is one of the 20-something armies in the game, and they pay for force weapons since each model in the unit comes with force weapons, which again will definitely be used because you'll deep strike in to kill some chaff with your storm bolters and then die to the enemy gunliner charges on the following turn. Totally useful and totally worth those extra points. And the last unit I want to talk about is the unit that everyone thinks of when you think of Great Knights, and that's the Dread Knight, or the Baby Carrier as some people like to call it. This thing is amazing. It can also deep strike and has some pretty good guns and close combat weapons to pick from. And because it wants to get into close combat as well as shooting stuff, you won't be standing still with it, so you're going to be moving with it. And it doesn't have a rule like Power of the Machine Spirit, and all of its guns are heavy, so you will be suffering -1 to hit for pretty much the entire game. And Emperor forbid you go up against an army that is naturally -1 to hit, because then you'll hit on 5s. You're basically an orc at that point, except you cost a whole lot more than orcs do. Then on top of that, we have other units that are also great, but I don't want this video to take too long, and it's just going to be me repeating all the great things about these guys for those units as well, so I think you get the picture. But yeah, this book is filled with tons of great things, and that's why it makes them one of the best. So that's going to be it for this video. And just so I don't get raged on by people who think I'm being serious about the stuff I say in this video because it might have went over their head, just look at the date that I posted this video. That should clear some things up for you. Anyways, thanks for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one. Happy wargaming.